teach you a little bit about how seismophone works. Here's the life lessons chunk. So, while you're heading off to university, take really good notes. I actually have used my optics notes from this class I used when I did university optics, because I liked how it was taught here better than how I got it at university. So take good notes. And stay in touch, not with just people here, but also the ones you're going to meet over the next few years. Because you can't be an expert in everything. But you can know people who are experts in everything. So when I get stumped when I'm doing my sci-fi work and I need to do something about quantum computing, that's way outside what I know. But Emily did her graduate research in quantum computing, and I can call up Emily and say, so, what's the latest and greatest, and can you give me a quick summary of the field? Or, I have to do a sewer inspection job in Toronto later this year, and oh my, that just doesn't sound like fun at all. So I want to have everything as not near me as possible. Turns out I know somebody who builds remote operated vehicles who specializes in marine work. So while I was down here, he and I were figuring out how to put a Kinect inside this little tiny remote controlled submarine so we can take it around and do range finding without me going anywhere near the sewer, which I like. So keep in touch, keep those networks, and do partnerships with people. You find out who are people you trust and who are people you say, well, I know nothing about your field, but I trust you to be competent at it. I know your work style, I know how you do things. You're totally competent, I will work with you and trust you completely to know all of the chemistry that I don't. The next chunk is invent your opportunities. Ask. There's no harm in asking. I managed to, earlier this year, attend as a UN delegate a hazards conference because I said, I'm a landslide person and I'm going to be in the neighborhood. Can I come? And it let me be a UN delegate, which was just awesome. And it seriously was just me saying, can I? And that's it. The worst thing I was ever going to say is no. Then nothing ventured, nothing gained. You're set. It's okay. Saying no is the same as if you didn't ask. So go ahead, ask things. Next chunk, ask questions about everything. You don't understand it, you want to know what it's like, you're kind of curious about something. Ask a lot of questions. No harm. People are, generally speaking, really happy to talk about the things that excite them. Quite obviously, you ask me about disasters, I will go on a roll forever. So go ahead, ask a lot of questions. And the next chunk, and this is a weird one, is that when you're trying to pick a university, you've got all sorts of pressures on you for this, that, and the other, and your parents are saying you need to do this, that, and the other. Something that I had absolutely no clue about, and I got really lucky with, is that the environment matters. Because there's going to be days where you go, wow, I picked the wrong set of classes, and I'm really homesick, and I just got in a huge fight with my roommate, and everything, it just kind of bites. And at that point you want to be able to walk outside and say, at least I live here. At least this is where I am. At least I have absolutely gorgeous sunsets. At least I am more than laundry distance away from home and my mom isn't showing up unexpectedly this weekend. At least this is where I am. So the environment does matter. So that is my advice on picking universities. So, any questions for me about career paths in science?
Which college did you go to?
I went to UC Santa Barbara, where I was in the College of Creative Studies. So technically I have a bachelor's in creative studies signed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, just to make it look like my physics degree is a joke. I then did my graduate work and got a master in disasters at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. I also did exchange work in Australia at University of Melbourne, Monash, La Trobe, and Ballarat. I also did exchange on a couple Canadian universities, but they're tiny and you've never heard of them. So I went all over. Really? Other questions? Alright, yeah, go ahead.
Is it like always easy to find work, or is it hard to find work when you have the degree you do?
So if you do any field science, it is amazingly easy to find work in the summer. Like just flat out, if you do summertime, my little 15-person company hires 75 people every summer. Because we're desperate for human beings come summertime. It's a little bit harder to find year-round work, but working in the resource industry, I work in Canada, it's our biggest industry is resource extraction. So everybody who does environmental monitoring of what happens before you put in a mine site, everybody who does where on earth is the ore for the mine site, everybody who does how do you actually build foundations of buildings, always has a job. However, that isn't particularly useful because that's my tiny little subdiscipline. I can talk to you as well about what my classmates, both my TAM classmates and my undergraduate classmates are going through. So far, we're just far enough out that people are finishing off their PhDs if they were in, as my age range right now. They've decided to do graduate work, they're finishing off their PhDs and getting postdocs. You find postdocs because your advisor knows somebody who wants somebody else. So they're off, and I don't actually know anybody who finished their PhD and wanted to do a postdoc who hasn't found one. I think that's a little unusual, but I have surrounded myself with incredibly motivated, ambitious people who are good at networking, so that fit has been fine. When my cousins were also all in science, they have been able to do things like, one of them is oceanography. She really wanted to do oceans work. She can't find oceans work anywhere, no way, no how, not at all, but she can find work doing environmental monitoring on land. It's the same training, it's not what she wanted to do, but she can still find work at it if she's willing to shift sideways. My big brother does communications. That's more challenging, but he's also put himself in Bulgaria, where it's very, very hard to find work when you don't speak Bulgarian. So it can be all over the place, and it can be depending on who you are and what you're doing, but a lot of finding jobs is who you know, and inventing those opportunities. It's the reason I was a Stargate Science Consultant is because I said, you need a science consultant, and I'm it. They didn't have one before me. Well, they had one for 2 episodes in 5 years. So you invent those opportunities, you find people, you talk to them, and one of the reasons why people go to university is that's where they meet the people they're going to start businesses with as well. So, over here we've got, oh yeah?
I'm just curious, what is zapping 25,000 volts of
Why do
electricity
we
into
do
the
it?
ground? Yeah, what does it tell you about the Earth?
So, there are 2 types of electrical surveys. There's induced polarization and resistivity. Resistivity, you do much smaller voltages, you have your metal pegs strung out everywhere, and you do measure the resistance in between each sets of pegs. And it tells you things like, where is there a great big gaping hole in the ground? So if you're in karst terrain, is there a cavern there? If I'm trying to build the foundation of a building, I'd really rather not put it over a giant cave that's going to collapse as soon as I start building. It will also show you where there's a big ore body, like a solid ore body. But it doesn't tell you anything else. Induced polarization is you zap it high, then you zap it low, then high, then low, then high, then low. And you see how the Earth is responding. So you give it a square wave and it actually comes out kind of rounded. And that tells you about the conductivity of the Earth between your pegs. And that conductivity is how you find diffuse mineralization. So metal, but not big ore bodies, just little fragments of it all over. So it's really, really, really good at doing gold surveys. So 2400 volts, power it in there, zap it really big so you can see things really deep, and see how that conductivity measures and what paths it goes. You can actually manage to, if you're lucky, get a good ore or gold vein going on, you can stick a light bulb on top of the post and actually have it glow. So, it's fun. Would you mind, Whitney, giving me a quick little stomp over there and we'll see if we can get a vibration source going? Yeah, there we go. Alright, so these are geophones I've hooked up over here, and the middle band there is right next to her foot. The far band is actually a timing signal that I don't know why it's overamping, and this isn't really a time to fix. But geophones are what we use to measure earthquakes or anything else, and LabVIEW always, always, always has errors. Part of debugging that in the field is not so fun. So these are just little magnets on springs that go through coils. And you have a magnet bounce up and down through a coil of wire, and it...
We haven't gotten there yet.
Well, we will generate an electric field from it. So you have a magnet, wire bounces up and down, you generate an electric field. So all these will do, every time they bounce up and down, is generating a little electric field we can feel over here. Oh, LabVIEW, I hate you. There's a whole saying about if it doesn't work, it's physics. If it moves, it's biology. If it stinks, it's chemistry. If it doesn't work, it's physics. Sadly, of course, it works. The program doesn't. But that's okay. So these are, I use them for, we send off our explosions and we see how things travel through soft versus hard material and find bedrock. But they're also the same thing that you would use to measure earthquakes, because they're all over the state of California. And if you want to be involved in that, the Quake Catcher Network will turn your iPhones or your smartphones into little seismographs. So that's pretty fun. And it will do what this should be doing if it wasn't giving errors every 5 seconds. And on that note, I'm slightly over time. I apologize for that.
No problem.
But I will be hanging around, and if people want to talk to me later, part of why I came here is because this way I'm not scary to you, You know who I am, you've met me, I'm obviously a fairly friendly person. You can ask me all sorts of questions. I'm on like every form of social media. If you look Mika Stargate, you will find me. Mika Geology, you will find me. It doesn't really matter. And I can, if I'm not in the right field of science, probably one of my classmates is, and can give you a little bit of advice about how do you go about finding your way along. So, I'll be hanging around. You're free to chat with me after class.
Thanks, Mika.